You're watching NFT Talk with Brick Astley. GM, welcome to NFT Talk. I'm your host, Brick Astley. The purpose of this talk show is to talk 101 art on Solana and exchange art. Today's guest is a leader in the women's NFT space, host of Ladies Night on Twitter Spaces, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Allison Joyful, I really appreciate your time being here on Exchange Art NFT Talk to talk about your work.
Thank you so much for having me, Brick. It's great to be here with you.
Oh, no, the honor is all on this side of the screen. For those that may not know you or getting to meet you for the first time, could you give me a little bit of background on how you came to exchange art and what brought you to Web3?
Absolutely. I am part of the Artifacts project, which I've been working on for just about a year now. So that was really my introduction to the NFT space. I got connected to the founder, Roger Dickerman, and we hit it off. We decided to work together. And it's just been such a beautiful development, you know, not only professionally, but also personally for me to meet so many incredible creators, builders in the space, and to just let my mind expand on what's possible, you know. Exchange art specifically, I mean, you were one of the biggest influencers, I would say, that opened my eyes to the platform. Also Keegan. And when I started to investigate minting my own NFTs, accessibility was a big factor for me, right? And that's really one of the major, points of the mission for NFT Ladies Night is really, making NFTs Web3 accessible for all. And so I just loved that aspect of it, and also the fact that you can search for poetry and written NFTs. I think that's one of the coolest parts of exchange art. It's such a great user interface, isn't it?
It is, and I love that they continually to do updates to it to improve the user interface. It's a wonderful collection. To start with, let's talk about your Genesis NFT here on Exchange. I'm going to pull it up real quick. Share.
Yes, my grief is an ocean. So just to frame it up, the collection of poetry is called Postmortem. And so it's kind of like this look of like after the loss and after the grief of the pandemic. However, we all experienced that. There's also, right, the life that follows the death, the creation that comes from the destruction. And so my grief is an ocean. I wanted to be the Genesis piece because it really is all about this juxtaposition of like joy and sorrow and riding the waves of life.
Thank you. Can you talk to me about the direct influence of My Grief is an Ocean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is a poem that I wrote when my father's health was deteriorating. He passed away just about a year ago. We just celebrated his life as a family for the first time 1 year later. And so it was pretty apparent to me that his health was deteriorating. And just before he went into the hospital, I was really having this emotional journey of raising my newborn son, just about a year. I guess he was more about like 8 months old at that point. And all of the joy that comes from seeing a little human discover the world, and that kind of like extreme happiness while witnessing my father's health decline. And it was like my father's transition was kind of like one of several hits that I felt like I had to keep, like I was just like coming up against such great obstacles, right? First, it was right after my son was born. We had a very traumatic birth experience, and I didn't get the birth vision that I had in my mind for 9 months leading up to that, right? He had to be taken and put into ICU, and I wasn't allowed to hold him or touch him for like 3 days right after he was born. So that was kind of like, oh wow, it doesn't matter how much you prepare for something, like if the universe has different plans for you, then that's what you get. And then pretty much right as soon as we took him home from the hospital, it was lockdown, and we were living in New York City. So it was very extreme. Our lifestyle sort of changed so rapidly. And then, again, just like all the plans I had in mind for my newborn son to meet people and take him out into the world were kind of dashed. And so my family and I decided to move to Florida from New York, to be closer to my parents and my husband's parents, just to have a little bit more family involvement as much as we could at that time. And so it was like we moved there, and then it became so apparent to me that my father was really, kind of going downhill. So that's really where my grief is an ocean came from. It was just kind of like, those waves where it's like you get up and you're like, you feel like, oh, here it comes, it's going to be so great, and then your dreams are sort of dashed in a way. And then having those pillars in your life that help you to keep going, right? No matter how many things you have to deal with, like death, loss, your life changing very drastically, what is it that keeps you going? And of course, for me, it was my son. That's what the lighthouse is in this poem when I wrote it at the time. But as I revisit this piece, and bring it out and share it with more and more people, the lighthouse has evolved so much, right? It's kind of like the NFT space in general, like this beautiful community that we have, all these friends that we've made in Twitter spaces, and that's that's another lighthouse for me. And so that's kind of the story behind the poem.
Allison, I want to say thank you for sharing those intimate stories behind this piece, and my heart and condolences for your father's loss, and how traumatic it could be to go through those different stages, and have things just hit you over and over. It's very powerful and very moving. Talk to me, ladies night, women's ladies night. This is where all this kind of transpired. And can you talk to me about this space that you offer and how people can get involved?
Absolutely. Well, it's a public space every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. We do it on Twitter Spaces. My Twitter handle is at AllisonJoyful_. And our mission is really just to make sure women and non-binary people, everyone who wants to participate in this revolution of Web3, is able to learn and grow and develop, right? Whether that's from being an artist or, a developer, or on the business side. And so we just kind of champion asking questions and talking about opportunities, and it definitely has a financial angle to it, right? We recognize that wealth is concentrated by in one specific group. And so I just want to try to open it up and like have real talk with other women about getting money and generating wealth, and destigmatizing the desire for wealth, really, because I have spoken with a number of women, and I definitely feel this myself. There's like some shame around wanting to, get rich, or wanting to, have enough. And, I hear it a lot in spaces when people are talking about selling their art, or, how do they price their works? Like the whole conversation around value is just so interesting to me. And I want to motivate people to feel like they are valuable, and their work is worth it, and not to sell themselves short. And in my life, I've kind of sold myself short in the past. So it's one of my goals to make sure that other women aren't in that place, don't feel that they need to shy away from getting what's theirs or what they want, really.
Absolutely. And I think it's a wonderful space. I've been able to pop in a few times myself, and I've witnessed and felt like it was just such an empowering place for women and non-binary to be able to have their voices heard and to be able to learn about this and destigmatize it. I think it's important to host those kinds of spaces in order to close that equity gap. Because I think it was what last year was what women only accounted for 12% of NFT sales, and that number's got to change because that women don't make up just 12% of the population and non-binary, and so I think by hosting spaces like that, you're aiding in changing that percent and in a positive way.
Yeah, and honestly, we just want to make sure that women are learning. A lot of women are uh, intimidated to get up in some of these spaces or talk in some of these groups because they are so male dominated. I still feel like that a lot of the time. I'm the only woman in the room, and so in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, I have to say something really smart, and that can just be really nerve wracking. So it's really just meant to have an open forum for anyone to ask questions and to connect with people who can help them. And we have facilitated so many connections there, built so many great relationships. We've started a couple auctions at Ladies Night. So that has been always so exciting. I just love when artists are getting wins.
Tell me about that feeling of like being able to host a space like that, and then you see the direct fruits of your labor right there with like the auction setting off right there.
It's the best. It's so awesome. I mean, even just selling NFTs, but then, people have offered to send people cryptocurrency, to help with something or the other, or, people are traveling and someone else doesn't have a place to stay. We've got that kind of hooked up. And yeah, that's what it's all about. You really feel like you are making change when you see things like action items happening. We're all about action at NFT Ladies Night. So yeah, that's totally fulfilling.
That's great. The action items. So for someone that might be more timid or might not be used to being able to go up in some of the more male dominated spaces and have their voice heard, what advice would you give them to maybe help them find that voice and find that courage?
Oh, what I think is really great is to practice saying something that you're comfortable saying and just kind of have like 30 seconds that you're, even maybe even less than that, but like something that is important to you, you want to share with people, and just practice saying it to yourself. And then when you find yourself in a public space, on Twitter, for example, and you can request the mic, just have your go-to that you're going to talk about. Like maybe it's just a project that you saw that you really loved, or maybe it's a question that you like to ask people regularly. But yeah, just have this thing in your back pocket that you can practice saying in public spaces over and over, and then pretty soon you'll feel more comfortable. You won't have the anxiety of getting up in front of other people, and you'll just naturally, you'll start having, thinking of other things to share and ask and say. So that's how, if someone has the desire to get up, but it's like feeling that intimidation and anxiety, I would say just kind of like maybe write it down even, and nobody's seeing what you're doing. So you could just read it right from your little note card. And you just kind of have to build that muscle and keep putting yourself out there, right? The only way to succeed is to fail 100 times. So even if you get up and you get rugged or whatever, just keep getting up there again and again.
That's great. That's wonderful advice. Yeah, write it on the notes, then you don't forget it, and repetition till you get that comfortability. I like how you called it a muscle to like exercise it and strengthen it. Um, so with that being said, post mortem is the collection. Do you have any sneak peeks potentially for what's around the corner for the mint? I see that My Grief is an Ocean is no longer available on primary.
Yes, it's completely sold out. So if you want to snag one of those, you'll have to make an offer on secondary. I think all my collectors are pretty diamond handsing now.
I may not
But
have
yeah, I would
diamond
love to
hands, but
read
I'll
it.
have brick hands. I
Brick
can't
hands.
sell with brick hands.
I love it. But I do have a few other poems. I would love to read one that is part of the next drop. And let me talk a little bit about the mechanics behind our release. So it's a collection of about just under 30 poems. I'm not putting a specific number on it because I may write more and add more to the collection. And the way we're releasing them is we're releasing them in sets. Right. So we did the first set of editions on Solana. Next, we're going to release a set of 3 one-of-ones. And those will be animated with sound. And basically, we're trying to drop on different blockchains to encourage cross-chain collecting. And then we will have, towards the end of the release of the full collection, we'll do an airdrop to those who have collected multiple pieces across blockchains. So we have like these really sweet, clean pieces of art from Natasha post book that will be airdropped, and those are also landscapes, so they'll like look really nice if you want to put them as your Twitter banner or something like that. But yeah, we wanted to both highlight the poetry but then also reward our collectors with a really amazing unique piece of art at the end. So this poem that I'm going to read is called Timeless, and will be one of the first one-of-ones that we're putting out. And this poem, I wrote it and I really wanted to convey the feeling of having COVID, or, having any sickness where you have to quarantine. But then feeling connected through, for in my instance, through Twitter Spaces. You know what I mean? Like I was stuck in my room, like having all these crazy COVID symptoms, like total brain fog, very like delirious. And then every once in a while I would come out of it and be like, let me get on Twitter Spaces and see what's going on. And I really felt like all of you there were bringing me back to life. So that's kind of the backstory of Timeless. Here we go. I heard a bird outside, sounded like a baby's cry. Listened to a squirrel scream, delirious in my sickness. I popped up to open the blinds, and that crow laughed in my face, fading in and out, crossing back and forth, shivering cold, then burning up. The waves of COVID got me gasping. What time is it? What day is it? Night becomes daytime. The world keeps turning, forced to slow down, to stop, words choked in my throat. Sunlight rotates the room. I follow it each day from my 4-post bed. What time is it? What day is it? Voices from space give me life, held by the arms without hands, nursed by the healers with masks. Angels send me remedies through my DMs. Avatars become family. We expand beyond space. What time is it? What day is it? Who cares? We timeless. That's my love song to the NFT community.
I love it. I love it. You hit on all the points of how it feels to have COVID, but then you bring them out and like have that connection with the metaverse, and those avatars that bring you back. So that was wonderful. It's going to be a one of one.
That's going to be a one of one, yes. And like I said, that will be one of the first animated video poems. And with that, we really wanted to convey the rhythm of reading the poem while the words appear on the screen. Um, and there's just been so many facets to contemplate as we make these, like how do we want it to be displayed when it's listed there, how do we want the collection to look, if we don't get the video started. So that's one of my favorite parts about creating this way, is that it's the intersection of technology and art and learning and growing and expression. It's just really, really beautiful. So thank you for letting me share that, Rick.
Oh, thank you for bringing it onto the show and being the first to hear it. I'm very truly honored about that. That being said, thank you so much for your time here on NFT Talk. Women's Ladies Night, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern, right on the Twitter Spaces. They can follow you. And then, do you have any closing comments or any kind of final thoughts for our viewers?
Yeah, I would just say, don't get discouraged. Everyone keep going, keep growing, keep tapping in. We are honestly surfing these crazy waves all together. Sometimes we're way, way low, but we're gonna raise up all together. All ships rise with the tide, as they say. And I truly feel that. WAGMI, we're so early, all of it. But honestly, no toxic positivity. You just have to keep showing up and keep reiterating and learn from your mistakes. Don't let your failures stop you, because every trip up is one more step towards the ultimate goal. So keep going.
That's some great advice. Thank you so much again for being here. That being said, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and be kind to Mother Earth, because without her, none of the fiat or none of the crypto is going to matter. Always, always GM.